Fanalysis combines the data made popular in fantasy football with the latest sports betting trends to find the sharpest angles. And for that, we turn to the lead betting analyst from CBS News New York, Jared Smith. Here we go, Jared. Week away from the Super Bowl. In a year that has more analytics and more data crunched than ever before, the line for the Super Bowl is about as sharp as ever, but this is also a game where it is the most bet sporting event, so everybody's got skin in the game. So let's just throw it out there from the very beginning here. It's 1.5. That's the spread right now. What are the numbers telling you about this game?
Well, the weighted DVOA, which again, when we talk about DVOA, it's kind of been the industry standard for grading these teams over the last few years. The weighted numbers takes into account how you've done during the back portion of the season, your recent form, so to say. The weighted DVOA said the Chiefs should be favored. So that's where my money went immediately. And I actually thought that the number would move towards Kansas City. But I think the circumstances of the weekend from championship weekend kind of pushed it towards Philly, at least at the onset. Of course, the circumstances being the Patrick Mahomes injury and then the cluster injuries to the Chiefs at wide receiver. And then on the other side, just the Eagles' flat out dominance during not only their game against the Niners, but their entire postseason where they really haven't sweat 1 minute. So I think those factors combined got the sharp money to the window early on the Eagles. That's why we saw that line move towards Philly. But since then, it's drifted back towards Kansas City. And I think that's because now that we've had a chance to kind of breathe, we digest, and we look at some of these numbers that say maybe the Chiefs should be favored in the game. So I think the Chiefs at any underdog price you can find, at least according to the DVOA numbers, the weighted DVOA numbers, that's a pretty good bet.
Okay, so at this point now, as the week has gone on, there are actually now more questions about Hurts' shoulder than there are about Mahomes' ankle. I mean, you probably feel a little bit more confident with Mahomes' ankle right now. And even though the Eagles clearly have a matchup advantage with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith against that Chiefs secondary, you have to really wonder whether Hurts has the ability to take advantage of that.
Totally agree. And when I look at Jalen's numbers against the Niners, and you could say, oh, well, the game was a blowout. He didn't really need to do much through the air. That's fine, but it wasn't a blowout early on. And it's fair to say that he really struggled in this game. I mean, I'll give you some of these advanced numbers, and you tell me if they matter. He had the lowest adjusted accuracy rate of his entire season against the 49ers, the lowest yards per attempt of his entire season against the 49ers, and well below what his average is for the year. He also had his fifth longest time to throw rate. So not only was he inaccurate, at least relatively speaking to his entire season, not only was he not pushing the ball down the field effectively with the yards per attempt numbers, but he was taking a lot more time to digest the coverages and get the ball out. So there's a lot of things with Jalen Hurts' game that not really very strong coming into this matchup. And I know the Chiefs defense, at least narrative based, isn't very good, but I can make a lot of cases why Chris Jones is going to be a problem in this game. And a lot of it revolves around how the Niners played the Eagles front. They played a wide 9 technique, which means their 2 defensive tackles were basically lined up on the inside shoulder of each guard. And it allowed Jason Kelce just this wide open highway to pull to whatever he wanted to do. And the Eagles just ran it up the middle during the most part of that game. That's not going to be the case in this game. Steve Spagnuolo is going to put Chris Jones right on the nose, and he's going to make the Eagles out physical, arguably the best defensive player on the field in this game, the Chiefs defensive tackle. So I think this game's going to be a lot different than what we saw against the Niners last week. I don't think Philly's going to have as much success running it. And I think Chris Jones is going to be a factor that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. We're talking a lot about the Eagles defense and all the sacks they've gotten this year. Right. Well, the Chiefs are pretty good at getting sacks too. 55 of them throughout the course of the regular season, second most to the Eagles. So I think both defenses have dudes up front. I think Jalen Hurts, yeah, you're right, Steve, maybe a little bit of a question mark there.
Well, the Eagles are going to have to come up with a game plan. And that Chiefs defense is actually sneaky good, and they've been sneakily better as the season has gone on and into the playoffs. Here's the thing. Chris Jones is one man. You know, as dominating of a force as he is in the middle, the Chiefs have still not the Chiefs are still allowing 4.5 yards per attempt this year. All right, that's not the bottom third in the entire NFL. And I think if you look at the analytics, and I'm not sure if those analytics carry over into the Super Bowl, but if you look at the analytics for the season, if you can run on the Chiefs, you can control those games. That's got to be the game plan for the Eagles, especially when you factor in what Hurts' shoulder is feeling like.
Steve Spagnuolo knows that too. And that's why I think you're going to see a very different game plan in this game. Again, the Niners were almost giving the Eagles an easy road right up the middle. I watched a lot of the all-22 footage of that game and some of the big runs that the Niners had, or that the Eagles had against the Niners defense. And I'm just seeing it almost looked like a super highway right up the middle with both Kinlaw and Armstead, the defensive tackles, shaded on the guard side. They had nobody lined up over the center, Jason Kelce. That allowed him to get right to the linebacker level. It also allowed him to pull free releases. If I'm Steve Spagnuolo, and again, you've covered Steve for years, defensive coordinator with the Giants, shut down the Patriots, great offense in those Super Bowls. I trust him to come up with a game plan that will mitigate what has been a very effective Eagles running game this year. And if I'm Spags, the goal should be make Jalen Hurts beat me. And if that can be what transpires on the field, then I think the Chiefs have an immediate edge. Now, easier said than done. You're right. Chris Jones is one man. They're going to have to play as one unit on that defensive line if they're going to want to shut down what has been a very effective Eagles running game this year. But I think I could see a scenario playing out where Chris Jones in the A-gap really makes life difficult for Miles Sanders, and then it's Jalen Hurts having to either pull it on the read option and test that shoulder or throw it. Wow. And again, I don't know if he's ready for this moment. So far, the numbers in the playoffs have not been favorable for Jalen Hurts. Patrick Mahomes on one leg played infinitely better than Jalen Hurts did in the playoffs so far. So I'm curious if Jalen can rise to this moment, because I think the game plan for Spags is going to be shut down the run and make Jalen beat me with his arm. And we'll see if he has the ability. Now, they've got the weapons on the outside to do it, that's for sure. But Jalen's got to put the ball in the right place, on time and on target. And so far in the postseason, that hasn't been the case.
You know, I'm really glad that you're getting into the X's and O's of this, because the game plan against Jalen Hurts has always been play contain. To put that wide nine out there, to put pressure on the outside and force him up the middle. But now that he's got that shoulder injury, now that he might not be able to throw the ball deep, maybe you treat him more like a Tom Brady, where you put pressure up the middle and try to force him to come to the outside. So, but I'm curious whether or not you are impressed at all by what the Eagles have done in the playoffs, or is it weighted against the opponents they played and the situations that arose, such as the injury to a quarterback?
Hard to ignore the latter there, Steve. It really is, because they faced the Giants, who, again, not a lot of talent there on that Giants roster. So the Eagles should have been able to roll the ball out and win that game, more often than not. And they did. And Daniel Jones, showed a little bit of the cracks in the armor that we've seen. And then the next week, you have to give Hassan Reddick and the Eagles defense a lot of credit for knocking Brock Purdy out of the game. But from that point on, anything that the Niners offense did against the Eagles defense, you have to throw away, because the Eagles knew that Niners couldn't throw the ball. So they weren't playing the same defensive scheme that they are going to have to play in this game, because Patrick Mahomes, last I checked, can definitely throw the ball. So there's a lot of really difficult variables to digest here, because you want to give the Eagles their flowers. They've been the best team all year. I don't take away anything that they've accomplished to this point, but this is going to be the first time that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are really going to manage up in these high pressure moments, because we're not going to, unless Patrick Mahomes gets hurt and it's Chad Henne, but we're not going to see the same offense that they faced. So we'll see what that matchup looks like. And I'll be honest, the preparation matters too. First year head coach quarterback combos making their first Super Bowl appearance, 1-4 straight up in their last 5. All of them are very recent too. Burrow and Taylor, they covered last year, didn't win. Shanahan, Garoppolo didn't win against the Chiefs. McVay, Goff got their butts kicked against the Patriots. Quinn and Ryan, we know that game could have gone either way, obviously, and it was the Patriots that came out. The only quarterback head coach first year duo that's actually won in this spot, ironically enough, the Eagles, Doug Peterson and Nick Foles a few years ago against the Patriots. So again, there's an exception to every rule, but I think on average, it's fair to say Andy Reid, 4th Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, 3rd Super Bowl, going up against Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni in their first moments here in this spot. Steve Spagnuolo, 1 millionth Super Bowl, going up against an Eagles offense that hasn't really risen to this occasion yet. I kind of think the Chiefs have the edge here.
So you're saying that you're not expecting to see Nick Sirianni nodding his head to the camera as it flies by. We never know what his reactions are going to be, and just don't ask Mr. Love what he thinks of Sirianni. Real quick, I want to go into the over-under on this one is moved from 48.5 now up to 50.5 at the last check, and more money is going to continue to flow in on the over because people love to score points. But I want to throw a little cold water on this, and for that I turn to referee stats.
Love this. Love where this is going.
The lead referee, Carl Sheffers, and his crew is under in 11 of 12 playoff games and under by 12.5 points in those games. His crew has also led the NFL in penalties for 2 straight years, and they're averaging 14 penalties per game in 2 Super Bowls.
Wow.
How can you use those stats to your advantage?
Well, at some point this week, we're getting the generic props, like the normal props. As the week goes on and we get closer to the game, sportsbooks will continue to expand their menu. And I can recall on multiple occasions us getting penalty props for this game. Absolutely bet the over in the penalty props. First of all, first and foremost, whatever the number is, I don't care, bet the over. But for the total itself, it's all going to be over money. And we've talked about key totals in the past, 51 being the most landed on total in the NFL over the last decade or so. So once you see it approach that key total of 51, I feel very confident in saying it will not breach that number. So to me, 51 should be your goal. If it gets back to 51, I would absolutely bet the under. And again, it goes back to what I was just saying. I think the Eagles offense is going to struggle in this game. I think the Chiefs defense is going, at least early on, with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni maybe a little bit overwhelmed by the moment. I think the Chiefs defense is going to get off to a good start here, and I think the Chiefs offense is going to set the pace. And if that's the case, I see this game trending under. And I know that's a very unpopular bet, but listen, at this stage of the season, these lines are super sharp, so I'll wait till it hopefully gets back to that key total of 51, and then I would look to bet the under.
Well, it's not about popularity. You're not throwing out opinion. You're just throwing out there what the analytics are saying, and this is what the data is revealing to you, and whether or not someone wants to believe in that data, then that's entirely up to them. And one more final thought here. The quarterback has won the MVP 10 of the last 15 years. We know that Mahomes and Hurts are obviously the only ones that are like plus 130, plus 125. But defensively, all it takes is a couple of big plays to get a defensive player to be the Super Bowl MVP. Hassan Reddick is at plus 4,000. Do you like your chances? Maybe sprinkle something on that?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say about the MVP. If the Chiefs win the game, there is no way on God's green earth that Patrick Mahomes is not going to be the MVP. To me, that is just I hate using the L word, lock, but if the Chiefs win this game, that is a lock. I could see some variance on the other side because we've seen the Eagles win and win big without Jalen Hurts having a huge impact on the game. So I could absolutely see someone else on the Eagles. Remember last year it was Cooper Kupp. We've seen receivers win this award before, Julian Edelman, Santonio Holmes, Hines Ward. I could absolutely see a Devontae Smith or an A.J. Brown sneaking up into the conversation. And then, yes, the defensive player, it's a long shot. I'll be honest. I thought I had one a couple years ago on the Bucs side. Yeah. But you got Tom Brady, so you can't really – again, it's like Patrick Mahomes. If the Bucs won that game, and I think it was Devin White, he had like 15 tackles. He had an interception to seal the game. I mean, he was all over the field, but it's Tom Brady, and you're not gonna steal the MVP award from Tom Brady, right? Same thing with the Chiefs and Mahomes. But again, on the Eagles side, I could see some variance there. So yes, Hassan Reddick at 40-1. If you are in the favor of Philly in this spot, I'm not. I think the Chiefs win. But if you do like the Eagles, yes, I could make a case for someone else besides Jalen Hurts to win the MVP.
Yeah, and by the way, I think Miles Sanders is at plus 2,500 for this. So that's another one that would be right in line if you don't think that it's going to be Hurts and if you don't believe in the Chiefs, which my man believes in the Chiefs. He's on the Chiefs side. Next week, we're going to find some other angles for player and fun props. For Jared Smith of CBS News New York, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.